The sky above Varath burned red with falling debris. Elder Themos stood in the Temple of Eternal Light, his crystalline hands trembling as he watched his world die. Through the tall windows, he could see the cities burning in the distance. Black smoke rose like funeral pyres against the sunset. The Krell had come 3 months ago with their warships and soldiers. They wanted Varath's resources. They did not care about the people who lived here. Themos was old, even by Varathian standards. His crystalline skin, once bright and clear, had turned cloudy with age, but his mind remained sharp. He remembered when the first Krell ships appeared in orbit. The Varathian Council had tried to negotiate. They offered to share their world's resources peacefully. The Krell response came in the form of orbital bombardment. 3 continents fell in the first week. Now, only 2 continents remained free. The capital city housed millions of refugees. The energy shields that protected them grew weaker each day. Themos could feel it in his bones. They had perhaps 3 days left, maybe 4 if they were lucky. Then the shields would fail, and the Krell would pour into the city like a dark tide. He walked slowly to the center of the temple. Other council members waited there, their skin flashing between purple fear and gray despair. They had gathered for one last, desperate act. In the center of the temple floor, ancient symbols glowed with faint blue light. This was the beacon of calling, not used in 1,000 years. According to legend, their ancestors had used it to call for help from the gods themselves. Themos did not know if he believed in gods anymore. But he believed in hope, and hope was all they had left. The council members formed a circle around the beacon. They placed their hands on the ancient stones and began to channel their energy into it. The symbols grew brighter. The beacon hummed with building power. Themos closed his eyes and poured everything he had into the device. He thought of his grandchildren, of all the children hiding in bunkers below the city. He thought of the beautiful forests and crystal caves that the Krell had burned. He thought of his people, who had lived in peace for thousands of years, now facing extinction. The beacon activated with a pulse of brilliant white light. It shot up through the temple ceiling and into space, carrying a message on every frequency imaginable. The message was simple. We are dying. Please help us. If any gods listen, if any beings of mercy exist in this vast universe, we beg you to save us. The light faded. The council members collapsed, exhausted. They had used the last of their strength. Now there was nothing to do but wait and pray. Light years away, the human exploration vessel Dauntless drifted through deep space on a routine survey mission. Captain Day Han sat in his command chair, reviewing reports from the science team. They had been mapping this sector for 6 months now. It was boring work, but important. Humanity needed to know what was out here in the dark. The communications officer suddenly sat up straight. Captain, I'm picking up something strange. It's a signal, but unlike anything in our database. Day stood and walked to the communications station. He was a tall man with tired eyes and gray starting to show in his black hair. He had served in the Outer Rim conflicts, seen real combat. This quiet survey duty was supposed to be his reward for years of service. Put it on speaker. The bridge filled with sound. It was not quite music and not quite language, but underneath the alien tones, they could hear desperation, fear, pleading. The ship's computer began working on a translation. Chief Engineer Una Park arrived on the bridge, called by the unusual activity. She was younger than Day, brilliant with technology, and had a habit of chewing her lower lip when thinking. She listened to the signal for a moment, then moved to a console and began analyzing it. Captain, this signal is being broadcast on every frequency. Whoever sent this wants to be heard by anyone listening. The computer finished its translation. A flat synthetic voice spoke the words that Elder Thamos had poured into the beacon. "We are dying. Please help us. If any gods listen, if any beings of mercy exist in this vast universe, we beg you to save us." The bridge fell silent. Every crew member heard it. They understood what it meant. Somewhere out there, people were suffering. People were about to die. Day looked at the data streaming across the screens. The signal included coordinates, energy signatures that looked like weapons fire, population readings that were falling by the hour. His first officer, Lieutenant Juan Cho, pulled up a star chart. "The signal is coming from a system about 40 light-years from here. Unknown species, not in any contact database." Yuna worked her console quickly. "Captain, I'm detecting massive energy signatures at those coordinates. Weapons fire, ship movements. This is an invasion." Day stared at the screens. Regulations were clear. Humanity did not interfere in conflicts between alien species. It was the prime directive, the one rule that kept humanity from becoming conquerors or unwanted saviors. First contact was supposed to be peaceful, organized, and approved by the Council, but Day had seen combat. He knew what those energy signatures meant. He knew what happened when civilians got caught in war. He thought about the voice in that signal, the desperate hope in those alien words. "How fast can we get there?" he asked. Juan checked calculations. "Standard FTL, 16 days. "They don't have 16 days. Day turned to Yuna. "What about the experimental high-burn drive?" Yuna's eyes widened. "Captain, that system isn't tested. It could burn out our entire FTL system. We'd be stranded." "But would it get us there?" She chewed her lip, running calculations. "Yes, maybe 4 hours, but the entry would be rough. We'd come in hot, probably in atmosphere. And we'd definitely burn out the drive. No way home without a tow?" Day looked around his bridge, at his crew, at people who had signed up to explore, not to fight. "I'm going to ask for volunteers. Anyone who doesn't want to do this can stay behind in a shuttle. No judgment. But I'm going. They asked for gods. They're going to get humans instead." The entire bridge crew stood up. Not one person moved toward the shuttle bay. Sergeant Tae Kim, head of the small Marine detachment, arrived on the bridge. She was compact and muscular, with scars on her hands from training accidents. "I heard we're going into a fight, sir." "We're going to try to stop one," Day corrected. "Even better." Tae smiled grimly. "Marines are ready." Day sat back in his command chair and gripped the armrests. This was probably going to end his career, might end his life, but that signal kept playing in his head, the desperation, the hope. "Yuna, prep the high-burn drive. All hands, prepare for emergency jump. We're going in." The Dauntless began to hum with building energy. Deep in engineering, Yuna pushed the experimental drive to its limits. She whispered a small prayer to no god in particular. The ship shuddered once, twice, then reality bent around them as they punched through space itself. Elder Thamos opened his eyes in the temple. Had he dozed off? How long had it been since they activated the beacon? Hours? Days? His body ached. The other council members lay sleeping on the floor, too exhausted to move. Then he heard it. A sound like thunder. He struggled to the window and looked up at the sky. Something was falling, something burning. A streak of fire cutting through the atmosphere, getting bigger and brighter. For a moment, his heart soared. Then he realized it was falling too fast, burning too hot. Whatever it was coming in uncontrolled. The object broke apart high in the atmosphere, pieces scattered across the sky like falling stars. 4 bright points of light, trailing fire and smoke, descending toward the sacred valley just outside the capital. Themos gripped the window frame. His skin flashed between hope and fear, turning his body into a shifting rainbow of emotion. The gods had answered their prayer. They had sent something. but gods were not supposed to fall from the sky in flames. The escape pod hit the ground hard. Captain Dae-Han felt every bone in his body protest the impact. The pod had done its job keeping him alive, but just barely. Warning lights flashed red inside the cramped space. Smoke filled the air. He coughed and slammed his fist against the emergency release. The hatch blew open with a hiss of hydraulics. Day crawled out into alien sunlight. Pain shot through his chest. Broken ribs, definitely. Maybe a concussion, too. Everything seemed too bright, too loud. He lay in the dirt for a moment, just breathing. Above him, the sky was a strange purple color. 2 moons hung visible even in daylight. He forced himself to sit up and look around. The pod had crashed in some kind of valley. Strange crystalline trees grew everywhere, their branches catching the light and throwing rainbow reflections. Beautiful. He checked his survival pack. Medical kit, water purification tablets, energy bars, and his sidearm. Not much to save a civilization with. His radio crackled. "Captain, this is Tay. Do you copy?" Day grabbed the radio, relief flooding through him. "I copy. Status?" "Alive and functional. Landed in what looks like a refugee camp, surrounded by very tall, very shiny aliens. They seem peaceful but scared. What are your orders?" "Hold position. Stay calm. I'll find you." 2 more voices checked in. Juan had crashed into a river but made it to shore. Yuna's pod had landed in a forest 2 kilometers north, all 4 of them alive. Dai allowed himself 1 moment of gratitude, then pushed to his feet. Pain flared in his ribs, but he ignored it. They had work to do. Tae Kim stood very still as the crowd of Varathians surrounded her pod. She kept her hands visible and empty, making no sudden movements. The aliens were tall, maybe 7 feet on average, with skin that looked like living crystal. It reflected light and seemed to change color based on their emotions. Right now, most of them showed purple, which she guessed meant fear. One Varathian stepped forward. He wore robes that marked him as some kind of priest or official. His skin flickered between purple and gold. He held up a small device and spoke into it. The device translated his words into something Tay could understand. "Are you a warrior sent by the divine?" the priest asked. His voice trembled with hope and fear mixed together. Tay considered lying. It might be easier. But she had never been good at lying. "I'm a Marine. We heard you needed help." The priest's skin flashed bright gold for just a moment. He turned to the crowd and spoke rapidly in their language. The crowd's colors shifted from purple to gold, spreading like a wave through hundreds of aliens. They began to speak all at once, their voices rising in what sounded like relief or maybe joy. The priest turned back to Tay. "My name is Luminor. I serve the Temple of Eternal Light. You came because of our prayer?" "Your distress signal, yes. There are 4 of us. We need to meet up and assess the situation." Luminor nodded quickly. "Of course. I will guide you to the temple. The elder will want to meet you. And your injured companion in the river, we have people bringing him now. The other one in the forest, we will send guides." Within 2 hours, all 4 humans stood in the Temple of Eternal Light. It was a massive structure, all crystal and light, beautiful even with the scorch marks from nearby explosions. Elder Thamos waited for them in the main chamber, surrounded by other council members. When he saw the humans, his skin shifted through a rainbow of colors. "You came," he whispered. "You actually came." Day stepped forward, one hand pressed against his ribs. "We received your signal. Can you tell us what's happening here?" Thamos explained everything. The Krell Empire had invaded 3 months ago. They wanted Vareth's crystal deposits and mineral resources. The Varathians had tried to negotiate, but the Krell did not negotiate. They conquered. 3 continents had already fallen. The remaining 2 were protected by energy shields, but those shields were failing. The Krell ground forces numbered in the hundreds of thousands. Their warships controlled orbit. "How many days until the shields fail?" Juan asked, always focused on the technical details. 3 days, perhaps 4 at most. "And your military forces?" Tay said. Themos looked confused. "Military forces? Soldiers, army, defense forces. We have no such thing. We are a peaceful people. We have never needed warriors." Themos gestured at the walls, where images showed Varathian history. Thousands of years of art, philosophy, science, no wars, no armies. "We thought our shields would be enough. We were wrong." The 4 humans exchanged looks. Yuna spoke softly. "They have no way to fight back." Day felt his chest tighten, and not just from the broken ribs. These people were completely defenseless. They had sent out a prayer because they had no other options, and now they were looking at 4 humans like they expected miracles. "Show me your defensive capabilities," Day said. "Everything you have." They spent the next hour touring Varathian defenses. It was worse than Day had feared. The shields were designed to stop energy weapons and projectiles, but they were stationary. Once they failed, there was nothing else. The Varathians had some tools that could be used as weapons. Mining lasers, industrial cutters, but nothing designed for combat. Tay examined a mining laser with a professional eye. "This could work. Limited range but decent power output. How many do you have?" "Perhaps 10,000, Luminor said. "We use them in the crystal mines." "That's something at least." Tay looked at Day. "Sir, with your permission, I'd like to start basic combat training with volunteers." Yuna was studying a technical schematic of the city's energy grid. "Their civilian technology is actually quite sophisticated. I might be able to repurpose some of it, and if I can get back to the Dauntless wreckage, there might be weapon systems I can salvage." Juan nodded. "I can work with their engineers on the energy shields. Maybe we can make them mobile, use them tactically instead of just as a static defense." Day looked at his 3 crew members. They were already planning, already working to solve an impossible problem. That was what humans did. They looked at impossible situations and tried anyway. But he had to be honest with them, and with the Varathians. "Everyone needs to understand something," Day said slowly. "There are 4 of us. 4. And hundreds of thousands of them. We have no ship, no backup, no way to call for help. Even if we do everything right, even if we're perfect, the odds are not good." Themos stepped forward. His skin had settled into a steady blue color that somehow conveyed determination. "You came when we called. You crashed your ship trying to reach us. You could have died. You still might die. But you are here, trying to help us when you have every reason to leave us to our fate." He placed a crystalline hand on Day's shoulder. "Whatever happens in the next 3 days, you have already given us something we lost. Hope." Day met the old alien's eyes. He saw wisdom there and courage and acceptance of what might come. He thought about the regulations he had broken, the ship he had destroyed, his career that was definitely over. None of it mattered now. "Okay," Day said. 3 days. Tay, start training volunteers. As many as will come, show them the basics. Yuna, take a team to the crash site, salvage anything useful. Juan, work with their engineers, make their civilian tech into something we can use. I'll coordinate with the Elder and plan our defense." He looked at each of them. "We're probably going to die here. Anyone want to change their mind?" Tay checked her sidearm. "I've had worse odds." Yuna smiled slightly. "I always wanted to go out doing something important." Juan just shook his head. "We stay together, Captain." That night, Day stood on a balcony overlooking the Varathian capital. Millions of lights twinkled in the darkness. Millions of people, families, children, all counting on 4 humans to somehow save them from an army. Yuna joined him, bringing 2 cups of something the Varathians drank. It tasted like mint and starlight. They stood in silence for a while. "You know this is crazy," Yuna finally said. "Completely insane," Day agreed. "We're going to need a miracle. Then we'll make one." Day raised his cup. "To miracles." Yuna clinked her cup against his. "To miracles." Below them, in training areas throughout the city, Varathians were learning to hold weapons for the first time in their history. They were clumsy and scared, but they were learning. In 3 days, they would face an army. In 3 days, they would discover what they were made of. The humans had fallen from the sky in flames, bringing hope in their wake. Now they had to deliver on that promise. 3 days to save a world. The clock was ticking. Sergeant Tae Kim woke before dawn on the first training day. Her shoulder hurt from sleeping on a Varathian bed that was not designed for human bodies. She ignored the pain and dressed quickly. 500 Varathian volunteers waited for her in the training field. Time to see what they were made of. The volunteers stood in nervous groups, their crystalline skin flashing purple and gray. They were teachers, artists, engineers, parents. None of them had ever held a weapon. Tae looked at them and saw raw material. Not soldiers yet, but maybe they could become something close. "My name is Sergeant Tae Kim," she called out. The translation devices spread her words through the crowd. "I'm going to teach you to fight, not because I want to, not because it's glorious, but because your families are behind you and the enemy is coming. In 3 days, they will try to kill everyone you love. Are you going to let them?" The crowd murmured. Colors shifted. Some gold determination mixed with the purple fear. Good enough for a start. "Fighting is not complicated," Tae continued. "You learn to move, to hide, to strike, and to fade away. The enemy has better weapons and more soldiers, so we don't fight them fairly. We ambush, we trap, we make them bleed for every step. Now, everyone spread out. We start with basic movement." The training was brutal. Varathians were not built for combat. They were tall but fragile, their crystalline bodies beautiful but not made for violence. They stumbled over obstacles. They flinched at loud noises. Many wanted to quit in the first hour. Tae did not let them. She ran the drills again and again. Move quietly. Take cover. Aim at the target. Basic things that human soldiers learned as children. For the Varathians, it was completely new. But slowly, painfully, they began to learn. By midday, they could move through the crystal forest without making noise. By evening, they had learned to set a simple ambush. Tae watched them work and felt something like pride. They were still clumsy and scared, but they were trying. A young Varathian named Sola approached her after the training. Her skin flickered with nervous gold. "Sergeant, may I ask a question?" "Go ahead." "The Krell have armor and heavy weapons. We have mining tools. How can we possibly win?" Tae looked at the young alien. She reminded Tae of herself years ago, before her first real battle, full of fear and doubt. "We probably can't win, not in a straight fight, but we can make them pay. We can slow them down. We can protect our people long enough for something to change. Sometimes that's enough. And if nothing changes, then we die protecting what matters, better than dying on our knees." Tae put a hand on Sola's shoulder. "Get some rest. Tomorrow we train harder." While Tae trained soldiers, Yuna led an expedition to the dauntless wreckage. The ship had crashed in a burning wasteland where the Krell had already swept through. The ground was scorched black. Nothing grew here anymore. Yuna stood at the edge of the crash site and felt her heart break. The Dauntless had been a good ship. She had maintained its engines for 3 years. Now it was scattered across 2 kilometers of dead ground, twisted metal, and broken dreams. "Come on," she told the Varathian engineers with her. "Let's see what we can save." They picked their way through the debris field carefully. The Krell had scouts in the area. They saw one patrol in the distance and hid among the wreckage until it passed. Yuna's heart hammered in her chest the whole time. They found the main computer core in what used to be the bridge. It was damaged but intact. Una and the Varathian engineers rigged it to an anti-gravity sled. Heavy work in the heat. They also found 3 pulse cannons, ripped from their mounts, but still functional. More sleds, more weight to haul back. As they worked, a Varathian engineer named Kento asked her questions. "Your ship could travel between stars?" "Yes, faster than light." "And you destroyed it to reach us?" Una paused in her work. "We couldn't let you die if we could help. The ship was just metal and wires." "You're living people." Kento's skin flashed bright gold. "Your people must be very brave." "No, just stubborn." Una lifted another piece of equipment onto a sled. "We don't like to leave things unfinished." They worked through the afternoon. By evening, they had salvaged everything useful. The journey back took most of the night. They had to stop every time they saw Krell patrols. By the time they reached the city, Una was exhausted and covered in soot, but they had the weapons. Juan spent his time in the city's power station with Varathian scientists. The energy grid was impressive. Clean fusion reactors powered the entire capital. The problem was that all that energy fed into static shields. Once those shields fell, the energy had nowhere to go. "Show me the mobile systems," Juan said. The Varathian scientists looked confused. A female named Rena spoke up. "We don't have mobile shield generators. The technology is too complex. You have anti-gravity sleds. You have personal force fields for miners working in dangerous areas. Can we combine them?" Rena thought about it. Her skin shifted from purple to thoughtful blue. "Perhaps. It would be crude, unstable, nothing like the main shields." "Crude and unstable is better than nothing. Show me what you need." They worked through the night. Juan had always been good with energy systems. The Varathian technology was different from human designs, but the principles were the same. Energy in, field projection out. By morning, they had a prototype, a portable shield generator mounted on an anti-gravity platform. It could protect maybe 20 people and would drain its power cell in an hour. But it worked. "Make as many as you can," Juan told Rena. "We'll need dozens." They also weaponized mining lasers, turning safety limits off and boosting power output. The lasers would burn out faster, but they would hit harder. Civilian hover transports got armor plating and weapon mounts. Nothing pretty, nothing elegant. Just desperate modifications to turn peaceful tools into instruments of war. Captain Day spent his time in the temple war room with Elder Themos and the Varathian Council. Maps covered the walls showing the Sacred Valley and surrounding territory. The Krell would come from the north, where their main base sat. They would advance down the valley toward the capital. Day studied the terrain. The valley was narrow in places with steep cliffs on both sides. Crystal forests that would limit vehicle movement. A river that could be used to channel enemy forces. Good defensive ground if you knew how to use it. "They'll come in force," Day said, thinking out loud. "The Krell commander has been cautious so far, but now he'll commit everything. He wants this finished." "How do you know?" Themos asked. "Because that's what I would do. 3 days to break through. He'll bring overwhelming force, smash through, and end this. He's done it 3 times already on other continents. He has a pattern." Day pulled up data from the Dauntless database. The Krell had fought dozens of campaigns. They always used the same tactics: massive frontal assault with armor and air support. They relied on superior firepower and numbers. They didn't adapt well when those advantages were taken away. "So we take away those advantages," Day said. "The valley narrows here. Here and here. Good choke points. We set ambushes, force them to bunch up, then hit them from above. Use the terrain. Make them fight on our terms, not theirs." Luminor leaned forward. "But Captain, they have thousands of soldiers. We have a few hundred trained volunteers and some repurposed tools. Then we make every shot count, every trap, every second. Day met the priest's eyes. I won't lie to you. This is going to be bloody. Many of your people will die. But if we do this right, we can hurt them badly enough that they think twice about the cost. Maybe even badly enough that they pull back. You believe we can win? Thamos asked. I believe we can make them regret coming here. Sometimes that's the same thing. The second day passed in a blur of preparation. Tay pushed her volunteers harder. They learned to shoot, to take cover, to work in teams. Some were better than others. Sola showed real talent. A male named Kiros could barely hold his weapon without shaking. But they all kept trying. Yuna got the pulse cannons operational and positioned them at key points in the valley. She trained Varathian engineers to operate them. Point at the target. Press this button. Try not to die. Simple instructions for a complicated situation. Juan completed 20 portable shield generators. Not enough, but something. He also finished modifying the energy grid so they could redirect power to different parts of the valley. Give them tactical flexibility. Day finalized the battle plan. It was complex, requiring precise timing and coordination. Everything had to go right. He knew nothing ever went right in combat, but they had to try. On the evening of the second day, Day called his crew together on the temple balcony. They looked exhausted. Tay had a new bruise on her jaw from a training accident. Yuna's hands were covered in burns from working with the damaged cannons. Juan's eyes were red from staring at screens all day. Tomorrow they come, Day said. Everyone ready? The volunteers are as ready as they'll ever be, Tay said. They're scared but determined. They'll fight. Weapons are in position, Yuna reported. Not much ammunition, but we'll make it count. Energy grid is online, Juan added. We can shift power where needed. The portable shields are deployed. Dai nodded. Then we've done everything we can. Get some rest. Tomorrow we find out if 4 humans and a few hundred civilians can stop an army. They stood together in silence, watching the stars. Somewhere up there, the Krell fleet waited. Tomorrow, everything would change. Tay broke the silence. Hey, Captain, if we actually pull this off, they're going to think we're crazy. We are crazy, Yuna said. Sane people don't do this. Sane people also don't fall from the sky in fire to help strangers, Juan added. Day smiled slightly. Then I guess we're in the right place. Tomorrow would bring blood and fire. Tomorrow would test everything they were. But tonight, they had hope. And sometimes hope was enough to change the world. Dawn came cold and gray over the sacred valley. Captain Daehan stood at the command post, watching the northern horizon. His broken ribs throbbed with every breath, but he pushed the pain aside. Today would bring worse pain than this. The Krell came at first light. 10,000 soldiers, armored walkers, gunships screaming through the sky. They advanced down the valley in perfect formation, confident and unstoppable. They had done this before. They expected an easy victory. Day watched them through electronic binoculars. The Krell were large creatures, nearly 8 feet tall, with thick armor plating and heavy weapons. Each soldier looked like a small tank. Against them, the Varathians seemed like children playing dress-up with mining tools. All units, hold position, Day spoke into his radio. Wait for my signal. Nobody fires until I give the word. The Krell advanced deeper into the valley. They passed the first marker, then the second. Day counted silently, his finger hovering over the detonator. He needed them bunched up, needed them confident. They reached the third marker. Now, Day whispered and pressed the button. The charges that Juan had spent 2 days planting in the cliff face exploded. Tons of rock and crystal came crashing down, burying the lead Krell battalion under a landslide. The avalanche blocked the valley floor completely. Dust and debris filled the air. The Krell column ground to a confused halt. This was not supposed to happen. The Varathians did not fight like this. "All units, open fire," Day ordered. From hidden positions in the cliffs and crystal forests, Varathian volunteers opened up with mining lasers and modified weapons. The beams cut through the dust, finding targets. Krell soldiers fell. Not many, but enough to create panic in their ranks. Tay led her ambush team from the east. 20 Varathians followed her, moving fast through the trees. They hit the Krell flank with focused fire, then vanished back into the forest before the enemy could respond. Hit and fade. Guerrilla tactics. The Krell commanders barked orders. The column tried to reorganize, but the narrow valley made it difficult. Soldiers bunched together, making perfect targets for Yuna's hidden pulse cannons. She waited until they were clustered, then fired. The cannon beams tore through armor and flesh, each shot taking down multiple soldiers. The first engagement lasted 20 minutes. When the Krell finally got organized and pushed forward, the Varathians fell back to the second defensive line. They left behind destroyed equipment and damaged ground, forcing the Krell to advance slowly and carefully. Day checked his tactical display. The plan was working. But the Krell had barely committed a third of their forces. The real battle was just beginning. By mid-morning, the fighting intensified. The Krell brought up their walkers, huge four-legged machines with heavy cannons. They began systematically destroying the Varathian positions. Return fire barely scratched their armor. Tay watched a walker advance toward her position. Her volunteers were firing their mining lasers at it, but the beams just bounced off. "Pull back," she ordered. "We can't stop that thing." They retreated through the forest, the walker following. Tay led it exactly where she wanted, down a path that looked safe but was carefully prepared. When the walker stepped on the hidden pressure plate, shaped charges exploded under its legs. The machine staggered, one leg collapsing, not destroyed, but crippled. Tay smiled grimly. "See? Even giants can be brought down if you know where to hit them." But the victories came at a cost. A Varathian volunteer named Kiros froze during an attack, too scared to move. A Krell soldier shot him before his team could pull him to safety. His crystalline body shattered like broken glass. The other volunteers stared in horror at their first casualty. "Keep moving!" Tay shouted. "Mourn later! Fight now!" They moved. They had no choice. Yuna operated her pulse cannon from a concealed position in the cliffs. She had a Varathian assistant named Krista, who helped feed power cells and track targets. The cannon was performing well, but the power cells were draining faster than expected. "How many cells do we have left?" Yuna asked. Krista checked. 3. "Maybe 4 shots before we're empty." Yuna cursed quietly. She needed to make every shot perfect. She watched the Krell formation below, waiting for the right moment. A group of officers clustered near a command vehicle, coordinating the assault. Perfect target. She lined up the shot carefully, adjusted for wind and distance, and fired. The beam lanced down from the cliffs, hitting the command vehicle dead center. The explosion took out the officers and scrambled the Krell communications. 2 cells left, Krista said. "Then we better make them count." Juan coordinated the defense from the temple, managing energy distribution and shield deployment. His portable shield generators were saving lives, but they drained power fast. He constantly shuffled energy between different units, trying to keep everyone protected while maintaining offensive capabilities. A call came in from the eastern flank. "We're being overrun. Need shield support immediately." Juan checked his displays. If he diverted power to the eastern flank, the western positions would lose their shields, but the eastern flank would be destroyed without help. He made the choice and redirected the power. The eastern unit held. The western unit took casualties when their shields dropped. There were no good choices, only less terrible ones. Juan learned that lesson quickly and painfully. By afternoon, the Krell had pushed deep into the valley. They paid for every meter with their blood, but they kept coming. Numbers and firepower were starting to tell. The Varathian volunteers were exhausted, running low on ammunition, and losing hope. Tay's unit was pinned down by a Krell assault team. They had taken cover in a crystal grove, but the enemy was closing in. Plasma fire cut through the trees, shattering crystals and starting fires. Tay was wounded, a burn across her left shoulder that hurt like nothing she had ever felt. "Sergeant, we need to fall back," Sola said. The young Varathian's skin flashed panic purple. "If we fall back, they break through to the city," Tay growled. "We hold this line." "We can't hold. There are too many." Tay grabbed Sola by the shoulders, her burned hand leaving a bloody mark on the crystalline skin. "Listen to me. Behind us are your families, your children, your home. If we run, they die. So we plant our feet and we fight. Understand?" Sola's skin shifted from purple to determined red. She nodded. "Good. Now shoot anything that moves." They held. Barely. When reinforcements finally arrived, Tay counted her unit. She had started with 20. 14 remained. 6 Varathians had died, buying time for their world. Their bodies lay among the shattered crystals, reflecting light even in death. Yuna saw the Krell walkers converging on her position. 6 of them, coordinated assault. She had 1 power cell left for her cannon. 1 shot, against 6 targets. Krista looked at her with wide eyes. "What do we do?" Yuna ran calculations in her head. 1 shot would not stop 6 walkers, but if she overcharged the cannon, pushed it past safety limits, she could create a massive blast, big enough to take out all 6 walkers, but the cannon would explode. Anyone near it would die. She made her decision. "Krista, get everyone back." 300 meters. Right now." "But Yuna?" "Now! That's an order!" Krista understood. Her skin went white with shock. "No! We can run together!" "Someone needs to make the shot, and I'm the only one who knows how to overcharge this thing." Yuna smiled, trying to keep her voice steady. "Go. Tell Captain Day that I made it count." Krista hesitated, then ran. Yuna watched her go, then turned back to the cannon. The walkers were 200 meters away and closing. She began the overcharge sequence, manually bypassing every safety system. The cannon started vibrating, energy building beyond what it was designed to handle, 100 meters. The walker's cannons swiveled toward her position. 50 meters. She could see the Krell soldiers inside the walkers through the viewports. 20 meters. The cannon was screaming now, pieces starting to crack and glow red hot. Yuna aimed at the center walker and fired. The explosion was visible from the capital city, a brilliant white flash that lit up the valley like a new sun. When the light faded, there was a crater where Yuna's position had been. 6 destroyed walkers lay scattered around it, smoking ruins. Captain Day saw the explosion from his command post. He closed his eyes for just a moment. He had served with Yuna for 3 years. She made jokes about engine efficiency. She chewed her lip when she was thinking. She saved his life once during the Outer Rim conflicts. Now she was gone. But her sacrifice bought them time. The Krell advance staggered. They had lost over 1/3 of their forces. The valley was littered with their dead. The easy victory they expected had turned into a nightmare. The Krell commander, Warlord Krenth, watched from his command ship in orbit. This was not going according to plan. The Varathians should not be fighting like this. Someone had taught them. Someone was coordinating their defense. He made a decision. Tomorrow, he would bring his full force. He would bring orbital support. He would burn this valley and everyone in it to ash. No more half measures. Total annihilation. Night fell on the valley. The fighting stopped. Both sides pulled back to tend their wounds and count their dead. In the temple, the Varathians held a ceremony for Yuna. They painted her name in light across the sky, the letters glowing in beautiful colors. They sang songs in their language that Day did not understand, but felt in his bones. Tai stood beside him, her wounded shoulder wrapped in bandages. Juan was on his other side, exhausted and quiet. They watched the light display and said nothing. What could they say? Yuna had been their friend. She had died protecting people she barely knew. That was all that mattered. "Sir," Tay finally said quietly, "what do we do tomorrow?" Day looked at the tactical displays. The Krell were regrouping. Tomorrow would be worse than today. Much worse. "Tomorrow we finish this," he said, "one way or another." The night was long and cold. The humans did not sleep. They knew what dawn would bring, blood and fire, the end of everything, or the beginning of something new. The third day began with fire from the sky. Warlord Krenth had brought his entire fleet into position for orbital bombardment. The energy shields protecting the capital held, but barely. Each impact shook the ground. Buildings cracked. People screamed. Captain Day watched the bombardment from the temple command center. This was it. The Krell were using everything they had. After this bombardment, they would send their ground forces in a final overwhelming assault. No more caution, no more tactics. Just raw force meant to crush everything in their path. "How long until the shields fail?" Day asked Juan. Juan checked his displays, his fingers flying over the controls. 30 minutes. Maybe less. They're hitting us with everything. Then we have 30 minutes to get ready. Day opened the radio channel. "All units, this is Captain Day. The Krell are coming with their full strength. Everything we've done for the past 3 days has been leading to this moment. I won't lie to you. Many of us will die today. But we're going to make them remember this battle. We're going to show them that you don't conquer people who refuse to surrender. Hold your positions. Trust your training. Protect each other. And when you see the enemy, make every shot count." He paused, thinking of Yuna, of all the Varathians who had died yesterday, of what they were about to do. "Yuna gave her life to buy us this chance. Let's not waste it. All units, prepare for final defensive action." The bombardment stopped. The sudden silence was almost worse than the noise. The shields flickered and died, their power finally exhausted. The capital lay exposed. Then the ground assault began. The Krell came with everything. 20,000 soldiers, every walker they had left. Gunships filled the sky like a swarm of metal insects. They poured into the sacred valley, a tide of armor and death. Day watched them come and felt his heart sink. How could they possibly stop this? But he had a plan. A desperate, probably insane plan. He had studied Warlord Krenth's patterns. The Warlord was proud, arrogant. When he sensed victory, he came personally to witness it. The Varathian forces began their fighting retreat, exactly as planned. They fell back through the valley, trading ground for time. The Krell pushed forward, sensing victory. The defenders were breaking. Just a little more pressure and this would be over. But Day was not breaking. He was pulling, leading the Krell deeper into the valley, into the killing zone. Everything depended on timing, on the Krell taking the bait. Warlord Krenth watched the battle from his command ship. The Varathians were fleeing. Good. This would be over soon. He made a decision. He would go down personally to oversee the final assault, to witness the moment when this troublesome world finally fell. His command ship descended into the valley, landing in the center of the Krell formation. Krenth emerged, 9 feet of armored war machine, cybernetically enhanced and equipped with the finest weapons the Empire could provide. His officers followed him, setting up a mobile command post right there on the battlefield. Dai saw the ship land and smiled grimly. The trap was set. Time to spring it. "Juan, now!" For 2 days, Juan had been secretly rerouting energy from the capital. Every power source, every reactor, every shield generator. All of it feeding into a massive capacitor network buried beneath the valley floor. Every bit of power the Varathians had, stored and ready. He activated it. A dome of pure energy erupted from the valley floor, expanding in a perfect sphere. It caught the Krell forces completely by surprise, trapping them inside. The dome sealed, cutting the Krell off from their orbital support, from their supply lines, from everything. Inside the dome, it was just ground forces. No air support, no bombardment, just soldiers against soldiers in close combat. And in close combat, humans excelled. "All units attack!" Day shouted. The Varathian forces stopped retreating and turned. Tay led a charge from the east, her marines and the volunteer fighters she had trained. They hit the Krell flank hard, using the terrain, using surprise, using every dirty trick Tay had taught them. The Krell, suddenly trapped and confused, tried to reorganize. But they were packed together inside the dome, in a valley that limited their movement. All their advantages were gone. Now it was desperation against desperation. The battle became chaos. Tay's shoulder screamed with pain, but she ignored it. She moved through the combat like a dancer, each movement precise. She had been fighting since she was 18. This was what she knew. Around her, the Varathians fought with the courage of people defending their last hope. They had learned well. They worked as teams, covering each other, using the tactics she had drilled into them. Sola fought beside Tay, her mining laser cutting through Krell soldiers. She was terrified, her skin flashing every color of fear. But she kept fighting, for her family, for her world. Juan managed the energy dome from the command center. It was draining power fast. He could hold it for maybe an hour, maybe two. After that, it would collapse, and the Krell fleet would resume bombardment. They had this window to win. No second chances. Captain Day led a strike team directly toward the Krell command post. He moved through the battlefield with Elder Themos and 20 Varathian warriors. His ribs hurt. His body ached. None of it mattered. He had one target, Warlord Krenth. The command post was heavily defended, but Day had surprise on his side. The Krell expected the Varathians to run. They did not expect this desperate assault on their leader. Day's team fought through the guards, taking casualties but pushing forward. Finally, Day stood face to face with Warlord Krenth. The Warlord was massive, enhanced with combat cybernetics that made him faster and stronger than any normal being. He looked at Day with something like amusement. "A human," Krenth said in perfect translated English. "So you are the one who taught these insects to fight. Impressive, but ultimately futile." "We'll see about that," Day replied. Krenth attacked with blinding speed. Day barely dodged the first strike. The second caught him in the ribs, sending pain shooting through his entire body. He staggered back, gasping. The Warlord was toying with him. "You cannot win, human. I have conquered 12 worlds. What are you? A broken soldier with delusions of heroism?" Day forced himself upright. He thought about his crew, about Yuna's sacrifice, about the Varathians who had learned to fight despite their peaceful nature, about the prayer that had brought them here. "I'm just someone who heard people calling for help," Day said, "and I don't know how to ignore that." He attacked. Not with the expectation of winning, but with everything he had left. Each strike was fueled by pain and fury and desperate hope. Krenth was stronger, faster, better equipped. But Day had something the Warlord lacked. He had a reason to win that went beyond conquest. The fight was brutal. Day took hit after hit, his vision blurred. Blood filled his mouth. But he kept coming. The Varathians fighting alongside him pressed forward, distracting Krenth's guards. Elder Themos, ancient and frail, fired his mining laser with shaking hands. In his final moments, Day remembered something Juan had given him before the battle, a plasma charge, small and powerful, meant as a last resort. He grabbed it from his belt with his remaining strength. Krenth saw and laughed. "A grenade? Against my armor? Pathetic." "Yeah, probably," Day agreed. Then he lunged forward, not trying to throw the charge, but pressing it directly against a joint in Krenth's armor, where the cybernetic enhancements met organic flesh, the weak point. Day activated the charge and threw himself backward. The explosion tore through Krenth's armor. The Warlord staggered, his enhanced systems failing. He fell to his knees, impossible shock on his face. He had conquered 12 worlds. He had never lost, until now. Day lay on the ground, his body broken, but his mission complete. The warlord was down. Around him, the Krell forces saw their leader fall, and their morale shattered. Tay saw her moment. "Push forward! Don't give them time to recover!" The Varathian forces surged forward with renewed energy. The Krell, leaderless and trapped, began to break. Some tried to fight. Others tried to surrender. The organized army became a panicked mob. In orbit, the Krell fleet watched their ground forces collapse. Their commander was dead. The planet had become a death trap. The fleet captain made a decision. This world was not worth the cost. They began to withdraw. Juan saw the fleet moving on his sensors. "Captain, the Krell fleet is retreating. They're leaving orbit." But Day could not hear him. He lay in the dirt, consciousness fading. He had done what he came to do. The Varathians were safe. That was enough. 3 months passed. The Sacred Valley had been rebuilt. Where once there was only death and destruction, now gardens grew. The Varathians planted crystal trees that would take centuries to mature, a memorial to those who died defending their world. Captain Day Han stood in that memorial garden, his ribs finally healed. Sergeant Tay Kim stood beside him, her shoulder still stiff but functional. Lieutenant Huan Cho was talking with Varathian engineers about setting up a proper defense network. A human rescue ship had arrived 2 months ago, the Valiant, sent to retrieve the dauntless survivors, but none of them had left. Elder Themos approached, his crystalline skin showing peaceful blue. "The defense force is ready for inspection, Captain. Sergeant Tay has trained them well." Day nodded. The Varathians now had a real military, small but professional, able to defend themselves. Tay had decided to stay on permanently as their training officer. She said she liked the climate. "Your ship is still in orbit," Themos continued. "The Valiant captain says they can take you home whenever you wish. Back to Earth. To your families." Day looked around the garden, at the Varathians rebuilding their world, at the memorial stone with Yuna's name carved in crystal alongside hundreds of Varathian names, at Tai discussing tactics with Sola, who now commanded her own unit, at Juan working with Rena on new shield technology. "Elder, can I ask you something?" Dai said. "Of course." "You called out to the gods. You asked for divine help. Instead, you got 4 humans in a burning ship. Are you disappointed?" Themos smiled, a uniquely Varathian expression where his entire body seemed to glow. "Captain, we prayed for salvation. The gods sent us something better. They sent us teachers, warriors, friends, people who showed us that we could save ourselves if we had the courage to try." He placed a crystalline hand on Day's shoulder. "You said you were just people who heard someone calling for help, but to us, you are the fallen saints, the ones who descended in fire and changed our world. That is divine enough for me." That evening, Day stood on the temple balcony with Tai and Juan. They watched the sunset paint the sky in colors that Earth had never known. "Are we staying?" Juan asked. "I think we are," Day replied. Tay smiled. "Good. I wasn't ready to leave anyway. These people need us." "They don't need us anymore," Juan corrected. "But they want us here. That's better." Day thought about the prayer that had brought them here, about the impossible journey through space, about Yuna's sacrifice, about the battle that should have been unwinnable. They had come as strangers from the stars. They had stayed as friends. Below them, the capital city lit up with millions of lights, each light a life saved, each life a reason they had come. The story spread across the galaxy. Other species heard about Varath, about the planet that prayed for help and received humans instead of gods. About 4 people who held the line against an army. Humanity became known as the species that answers prayers. the ones who fall from the sky in fire when others call for help, the warriors who teach peace-loving people to defend themselves. And on Verath, in the sacred valley, crystal trees grew tall and strong, a living memorial to the day gods fell from heaven. But they were never gods, just humans, and sometimes that was enough to change the universe.